Hello and welcome to another segment of the LPE Author Chat Series. I am Kimberly K. LaBoo, CEO and founder of LaBoo Publishing Enterprise. This month we have our special Anthology Edition featuring authors from the soon-to-be-released book, True Wealth Starts in the Mind by visionary author Lisa M. Jones. Our special guest tonight joining us is Ms. Joyclen Prevost, who has written the chapter titled Don't Make Excuses. Welcome to the broadcast, Joyclen.
Thank you. Thank you. Hi, Kimberly.
How you doing?
I'm wonderful. Wonderful.
Good. So let's talk about your chapter. First, why don't you tell us why you chose the chapter title, No More Excuses?
Thank you, Kimberly. When I love the title of the book, actually, True Wealth Begins in the Mind. And I really do believe that people possess and have everything it takes to experience true wealth. But it starts with you taking total responsibility for your life, good, bad, indifferent, wherever you are, whatever has happened, you deciding that I'm going to pick up where I am and go make the very best of it. So, but what I found in the business that I'm in and the position that I'm in with having the blessed opportunity to lead and coach other individuals is people make excuses. Even myself, when I got started when I got offered the opportunity to go in business for myself. I really saw it. I loved it when I saw it. I said, I want to do it. But then instantly I started thinking about my own deficiencies. And I was thinking, you know what? My husband would probably be more suited. But so I wanted to make an excuse.
Yeah, I think we all are guilty of this. Also, I was excited to talk to you about this chapter because some things I had to chuckle and laugh at because you were stepping all over my toes. So in your opening, you used the quote by Warren Buffett, and you said, when Warren Buffett was asked how he would describe the difference between getting rich and being wealthy, his answer was short and to the point. People seeking riches never have enough. Wealth is a state of mind. So why don't you give me your take on the difference between being rich and being wealthy?
Yeah, I just, I think, when I read that quote by Warren Buffett, and certainly, arguably what he's done with his life is amazing, and the influence that he has. So again, it goes back to initially what I said. You really have what it takes on the inside of you to do things that it requires you being able to dream bigger. It requires you being able to tap into places. It's going to also require you making changes of yourself. So being truly wealthy is I just think it's a prosperous state of mind. It's a prosperous, it's nothing missing, nothing lacking. So that's what I think. That's what I think.
Awesome. So you wrote, wealthy people always have enough. This would suggest that true wealth is an inner condition experienced long before you experience the outer manifestations of wealth. So that is going back into the mindset and everything that we've been talking about. So how do you think one begins to develop a wealthy mindset?
Well, I think one of the things that some of the traits that I talked about with a healthy and a wealthy mindset was being self-aware. Being self-aware, understanding your personality, your limitations. When I was initially offered an opportunity that would change my entire family's life for generations to come, I just shared with you that I wanted to make an excuse because I was inward. I was quiet. I didn't talk, and it required me making changes. And so I knew that about myself. I was very aware of it, but I knew I did not want the same life. I wanted something different. So I think you have to be aware of your personalities, aware of your limitations, and then decide that you're going to commit to the work to make the changes. So, self-awareness is just a huge part of it. That's one of those characteristics. And then when you do that, when you become aware, you decide, okay, I'm going to be willing to make the changes to go to a different place in life. I'm getting ready to do something I've never done before. So I got to become something perhaps that I haven't been.
Yeah.
So just being self-aware.
Yeah. That's huge, huge. So when you wrote about being wealthy, you said that you have to be intentional about how you get there, how you will get there. Tell us about that.
Well, I think what I was thinking about there is knowing your purpose,
Mm.
knowing your true purpose in life, knowing what it is that you want. And I remember when I left home to go to college, and I was not one of those people who knew exactly what I wanted to do. It was no question I was going to go and get educated, because that was the plan, that my parents had, the seed that they had planted. But I left not knowing, well, what do I really want to do? And, going on and going to school and going through school. And it wasn't until the later years that I realized that, working in the profession that I was in, I still wasn't gratified. I wasn't fulfilled. It was like it was something missing. And then when I found it, it was almost like all those voids were filled. I was satisfied, with every waking um, opportunity that was presented, whether it was something challenging or whether it was something provoking or it was a great day. I was just gratified. I mean, I realized I was purposed to do greater things, and it
Yeah.
required making changes. But when you tap into your purpose, you really, I think it appeals to what it is that we're here to do, what we're supposed to do, and that's
Yeah.
a part of that wealthy mindset that we're wanting to get to.
Awesome. Awesome. So you gave characteristics of the wealthy in your chapter, and you already touched on one of the three that I was going to ask you about. So you talked about self-awareness. So the other two that I wanted you to talk about were work ethic and then personal development. So talk to us a little bit first about work ethic.
Yeah, work ethic is huge. One of the things that you often hear people talk about is their dreams. You heard me talk a little bit about the purpose, what you feel like your purpose to do, and lots of times people have big dreams and big goals and ideas, and sometimes even plans, and all of that's great and the start, but then it has to be coupled with being willing to do the work, being
Yeah.
willing to be consistent, and lots of times being very consistent with what could be repetitious. But that's a character. I really believe it's a character trait, work ethic. You decide that you're going to work hard, eliminate any excuse, understand that, I'm purposed to do greater things. It requires me changing, but I got to get up early, being on time, showing up early, doing what's asked of you and a little bit more. All of
Yeah.
those things are shown up in the daily disciplines of work ethic. So it carries you a long way. It has to be coupled with the talent. It has to be coupled with the purpose and the passion. You've got to become, you gotta work hard at the things that you desire.
Yeah, I saw a video recently. It was talking about if you wanted to be successful, start by getting up and making your bed every day,
Hmm.
because of the repetition, like you talked about the repetition,
Right.
and just having that daily habit. And if you're doing that, it's a great way to start the day. And then he said, if your day really goes bad, at least when you get home, you have your bed that's all made up. It looks nice. I can't remember who did the video, but yeah,
So,
so it brought home that point pretty well. So talk to us about personal development. That was another one of your wealth traits, wealth
yeah.
characteristics.
Yeah, personal development is huge, and it's an ongoing process. It's every time we have to reinvent ourselves when life throws us curveballs or something happens, we have to be willing to grow. to grow and again change. You know, the word of God says that you know, learning is always abounding. We're going to always be learning. We're going to always be, you know, I mean, this past week, my husband and I celebrated our 34th wedding anniversary. And it's
Wow.
still yeah, it's still things that we learn about each other. So you know, personal development is, I think some of the things you can do to grow and personally develop. Some of the things that I did is, once I decided to go in business for myself, I had to migrate toward the thinking of people that were successful, that had done what I wanted to do. So I started listening to tapes. I
Uh,
started, you know, my car became a classroom. You know,
yeah.
you would rarely get in my car and hear anything other than a tape playing. I read autobiographies of people who had done exemplary things with their life, and a lot of times we get a chance to see the glory and all of the great things. There's evidence that people have won, but when you read some of the beginnings and some of the
Yeah.
things that they went to and through and the people that they were before we saw evidence that it was working, those people personally developed, you know. So I think you have to be willing to understand that I can grow and change, and you look for people that you can model. You look for the
Yeah.
behaviors, you know. This book will be an awesome opportunity for people to
Yeah.
personally develop and grow when you read all of the successful people that will and hear what they've done in some of the stories. So,
Yeah.
yeah, it's huge. That's a key component to a wealthy mindset, being willing to personally develop.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So you wrote about this is the part where you were stepping on my toes a little bit too. Stop procrastinating. You said procrastinators commonly make excuses for delaying and putting things off. They tend to think they always have more than enough more time than they actually do. That happened to me today. Some of the things procrastinators say to afford themselves the opportunity to put off is, I work well under pressure. I've used that one. I'll take care of that tomorrow, or I don't know where to begin. You said distractions are huge reasons why procrastinators wait until a later time. And then you gave some examples of that. But I'm guilty of this every now and then. And so, why do you think people procrastinate, and how would you suggest we stop? I'm going to put myself in that. We stop.
Yeah, you know, and you just said it a minute ago, is we always think we have more time than we do. We
Yeah.
always think we have more time. We think we can, and some people do perform well under pressure and under heat. But you know, I just think that you have to have a do it now and attitude, a do it now mentality. People procrastinate for a lot of reasons. It could just be avoidance behaviors, you know, find other things to do other than what they really need to do. Fear is another
Mm,
thing. Fear of not, you know, um, tackling the things that need to be taken care of. I think it was a book, I can't remember the author, but it was Eat That Frog. And you think
yeah.
about eating that frog, you know, who would even phantom that? But it talks about, in a list of things that you have to do, there's going to be things that we prefer and things that we dread doing, but they all need to be done. And the
Mm,
thing to do is go ahead and tackle the ones that you least want to do first. Go ahead and
mm,
get those out of the way. And I just think you have to have a sense of urgency. You know, we have to have a sense of urgency about emergencies coming up, things, and being in place so you don't procrastinate. You never know, you know, you just never know how much time you have. So decide that I'm gonna make the most of my day. I'm gonna get the most out of it. It's gonna be a productive day. So I am no longer gonna put off and put off. I'm gonna tackle the things that need to be taken care of.
yeah. And so, again, that's a mindset shift, right?
Yes, yes, it is. Yes, it is. And and
So,
and
so
then and procrastinators, Kimberly, that's why I thought about um, the excuses in the chapter that I chose to write, because that's what procrastinators tend to do, make a lot of excuses. So
hmm hmm Hmm. And so was there a point for you, like, so was this you at one point? Like, I think you said it at one point it was, but was there a point in your life where there was that shift where where you realized that procrastinating and making excuses was actually deterring you from getting to where you wanted to be?
Yeah, again, when I got started in business, it required me being more outward than inward. It required me, you know, public speaking. It required me learning to do things that I had never done before. And there were things that I really liked, like passing tests and studying. Those are things that I was good at. But what I had to do is say, successful people, they don't just do all the things they like to do. They do all the things that need to be done. So when I decided I'm going to be one of these successful people that I'm reading about and I'm listening to on these tapes that I'm listening to, I just decided that I'm not going to make any excuses. I'm going to do the presentations even afraid. You know, if I get a little intimidated when people don't perhaps receive everything I'm talking about, I'm going to do my part. That's what I made the decision. I'm going to do my part. And I just think that was a turning point for me.
Okay.
I decided that I was going to do it afraid and go forward. And procrastinators today, there's so many distractors with the internet and cell
Yeah.
phones and smartphones and just all the social media
Yeah.
stuff. As good as it is and as useful as it can be, is
Yeah.
sometimes a distractor for procrastinators.
Yeah, because you can waste 2 hours scrolling. Scrolling, responding. Yeah,
Mhm.
it's a mess. So you said 99% of failure comes from people who have the habit of making excuses and putting things off. Ouch. I was like, ouch. That's all I had to say about that is ouch. You also wrote, having a wealthy mindset requires you to say, before you even start, it won't get too tough for me. Quitting is not an option, and excuses don't count. So, how, you touched on a little bit, but how do you really get to a place of no more excuses, though?
Yeah,
Because we
well,
tend to make them all the time.
yeah, yeah. Well, again, if you're talking, especially when it does get tough and you want to, it'll be easier to quit than to finish. It'll be
Mm,
easier to give up than to go on. But when you decide from the beginning, it's not going to get too tough for me. And today, again, to making a decision that I'm going to have a wealthy and a prosperous mindset starts with I'm going to have successful days. I'm going to make the most. I'm going to be productive in the hours and the time that I have. And they add up. They add up to weeks, to months, to quarters, to seasons in our life. So I think to answer you, you start with a mindset that from the very beginning it's not going to get too tough for me.
mhm,
I'm going to figure this out. And if somebody else has figured it out and they've been successful at it, that means there's an example. And
mm.
I'm gonna stay with it until it happens for me as well. So you start from the beginning with the mindset of knowing if it worked for others, it's going to work for me also.
Yeah, that's awesome. So you wrote also about excuses won't matter. And so you wrote about the unfortunate ordeal that you had with Hurricane Katrina, and you titled that part of your chapter "Excuses Won't Matter." So talk to us a little bit about that. What you meant by that?
Yeah, Hurricane Katrina. The world saw what happened to our city in New Orleans, and our city suffered a hurricane and then a flood. And being in an entrepreneur and in business for myself, my team was spread it all across America. And I was like, oh my goodness, where do we go? What do we do? I had the fortune of not having my home destroyed or flooded, but my business was greatly affected.
Mm,
And what I realized, out of that disaster was the biggest blessing. was the biggest blessing,
Wow.
because it was the moments in there that, when we became very paralyzed and watching the TV and what was going on. I had to make a decision. You know what really matters has not changed. you know
Wow.
we are still here. We still have a viable opportunity. We still have our health and strength. We just have to now maybe migrate to another area. So it goes back to the mindset,
Yeah.
and I believe that when you know how to win, you can win wherever you are. You can win again and
Wow.
again. So that storm took us to another level. And what I also realized is I had been praying the prayer of Jabez for years. And
Yeah.
it wasn't until after the storm that I realized that, the Lord he had honored. I mean, I had talked about expanding out of the state that I'm in into several states, and broadening out. And I was dreaming about that. And that storm was one of that disaster was one of the things that allowed that to happen. So again, we had to pull ourselves up and decide, you
Yeah.
know what, we got to start again. We got to have a starting over mindset, but you're starting over
Wow.
with the knowledge you have, with the place you are. And once we did that, it was almost like, you know what, we can't lose. We're not going to lose. We're even better because we're now stronger, and leaders emerged and were remote from us, and they had to grow up. And so
Mm.
so
Wow. I love that you said that what really matters hasn't changed.
mhm,
That's
yeah.
huge. That's a great mindset to have, and a great realization, um, of appreciation, for that is huge. I like that so much. Um, so you gave us a long list of common excuses. So some of them were, I don't know what I want. I'm afraid. I haven't done that before. It's too hard. I really don't have time. It won't work for me. I'm broke. It's not my fault. I don't have a car. Nobody believes in me. I can't take a break. I can't get a break. I'm too old. I'm not educated. And on and on and on. I love that you gave that long list. As I'm like, oh my gosh. I can relate. I'm sure at some point in time we've all had them. And so, what is the consequence of continuously making excuses?
Yeah, yeah, and I'll tell you, the thinking behind listing those excuses is I wanted the readers to know what an excuse sounds like. 'Cause sometimes I found people who really make a lot of excuses, they don't think they're making excuses because they're
Mm,
very valid and real to them, but it's an excuse. And if you don't take total responsibility for where you are in life and where you want to go and the changes you have to make, you won't reach your goals. You won't reach your
yeah,
goals. And having a wealthy mindset, people who have wealthy mindsets, I believe they have lots of reasons and excuses and days that they want to just throw in the towel also. But what they do is make the best of the situation they're in. So when you
yeah.
eliminate excuses and you say, you know what, I'm going to take what I have again and go make the very best of it, and no excuse is going to matter. No excuses won't count.
Wow. Yeah. And so, lastly, you had so much amazing stuff in this chapter. I was like, okay, I know I'm going to have to cut it off somewhere. So, lastly, you talked about taking total responsibility. Tell us what that looks like.
Yeah, I think it was you talked a little bit about Hurricane Katrina. And one of the biggest blessings out of that storm was we ended up in Houston, Texas, and the fellowship that we became a part of was Bishop Ivy Hilliard. And I heard his wife say this, and I thought it was just so profound. She said, Excuses are crutches of the uncommitted." Is
Mm,
people who are not committed, because I'm not totally committed to the work that it's going to take to make the changes. I'm just going to make an excuse. You know, because I'm not totally committed to the hours that it's going to require for me to practice, drill, rehearse, get better at my craft. I'm just going to give you an excuse of why it's not going to work. So it's a crutch. It's a crutch that I think a lot of times people spend their lifetime leaning
Mm,
on. But I want the readers to understand that if you are going to have a wealthy mindset and you're going to get the most out of your life, you got to take total responsibility for where
wow.
you are and what has happened or what has not happened, and decide that you are going to go and you're going to get better. You know, there's answers, there's reasons, there's resources. And if you really want it and you commit to the work, commit to the plan you have, commit to the changes that has to be made, you can have the true wealth that you're looking for.
So what would be the first step though that you would give to somebody who wants that?
Well, the first step is to identify what's stopping you. What's
Mm,
stopping you from what's stopping you from
huge.
going forward? What's stopping you from, getting the results you want? Because that's the very thing that, the very thing that I think I talked about fear a minute ago being one of those things that stops people from really, going forward. In my business, it requires, making phone calls. It requires doing presentations. It requires, extending your hand to people. And,
Yeah.
a person like me who was quiet, who was inward, who was, not accustomed to doing that, the excuse I could have is, you know what, I'm afraid to talk to people. What if they tell me no? I mean, I don't know. And the very thing that you are fearing is probably the thing that you need to do. It's the
Wow.
thing that you really need to do to get
Yeah.
committed to go to the next level. And when you really break through some of those barriers, you feel so much better. You
Yeah.
realize it's not as bad as you thought it was. A lot that fear is just a huge illusion that's in your
Right.
head. That's the breakthrough, that's the overflow, that's the wealthy mindset that you're looking for. So identifying what's stopping you and deciding, you know what, I'm gonna get a plan to figure out how to get around this and go forward with it, whether it requires me getting some help. Becoming an entrepreneur years ago, I had small children. They were 5 and 7 years of age, and I was one of these mothers who really didn't leave my children with anybody. I was very particular, and but what I found out is I had great people that were around me that would gladly help.
Mm,
I had to ask for the help. I had to trust
yeah.
somebody. So I just think that that's it, identifying what's stopping you and then getting a plan to to go for it and tackle it and not keep putting it off, not keep coming up with
Yeah.
reasons and excuses for not doing.
Perfect. That's golden. Thank you so much for
Mhm.
joining us, Joyclen. I really enjoyed this conversation and just really love your chapter. And I can't wait for other people to read it. And so, guys, you guys are just going to be so blessed by this, and all the other chapters in the book are just amazing. So, thank you so much for coming on the LPE Author Chat, Joyclen. I have just so enjoyed having this conversation with you.
Well, thank you for having me. Thank you,
Thank
Kimberly.
you. And so, everyone else, thank you to our viewing audience. Thank you for hanging in there. Thank you for um, watching this series of the LPE Author Chat with the authors from True Wealth Starts in the Mind by visionary author Lisa M. Jones. And so we still have some more interviews left to do next week. And so be sure to come back and join us. But thank you guys. And if you are someone who's thinking about writing your own book, head on over to www.laboopublishing.com and connect with us there. Take care, guys. Be blessed and have a great evening.